All right. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you may be tuning in. We're here. Let me just make sure we're good. Platform-wise, as you know how we do, Monday through Friday. We're here. All right. Wednesday, we're good. Facebook, we're good. Let me go to LinkedIn real quick. I'm working towards making this process a whole lot quicker because I know I've been reading some of the comments and they say, spend a little too much time getting that part of it. All right, so let's see here. LinkedIn, we good. Facebook, we're good. Let me go to LinkedIn real quick. I'm working towards making this process a whole lot quicker because I know. Yeah, let me just get on YouTube real quick. Make sure we're straight. Just bear with me, podcast listeners. Just know, I understand. You'll be okay. You'll live. All right, so let's see. YouTube be straight. I understand. You'll be okay. You'll live. All right, there we go. So let's see. YouTube be straight. All right, we are all good. Good morning, good afternoon, good whatever time it may be when you are tuning in. When you are tuning into this, my name, let me just introduce myself to anybody that may be new around here. My name, As One Crookshank. I am your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author and educator. What I do, what I've created, what this whole business, the whole brand is all about, is taking the whole Move Swiftly brand is all about, is taking the lessons that you learn on the football field, the teamwork lessons that you learn on the football field, and aligning them with businesses and business organizations and business owners. So they have a team, a group of employees, a staff, a group of people that moves as efficiently, as productive, and as hungry as a championship high school or youth football team. I pretty much just translate those skills into what businesses need these days. So that's what I do in a nutshell here. And today is a day in which we are talking entrepreneurship like we talk every single Wednesday for the past, since this summer. In fact, I'll just give you a quick story of how I came up with the term wintrapreneur. I was a part of a coaching program, and me and my coach, the person I was paying for, shout out to Dre, we were back and forth kind of kicking around some ideas, and we were trying to figure out the ideal client or the ideal thing in which I should be telling people that I'm doing, how I help people and all that. And we came up with the word intrapreneur. And then because I am the one and only Move Swiftly speaker, because I have to be the one that always gets my creative spin on things, I just added a W to intrapreneur, which means basically a person that has an entrepreneurial vision, an entrepreneurial thing that they want to do, and they've been blessed enough to align their entrepreneurial vision with a job, with a organization, so they're getting paid every 2 weeks, and they're also in alignment with their business, so they feel like they're walking in their purpose every single day, which is, again, yours truly, something I've been doing for a couple years now. Something I never even considered doing anything else outside of being a intro/wintrapreneur. So I simply added a W to it, and bang, it's my word. The book number 6, the reason I tell people, look, I'm 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author, because book number 6 that is being written as we speak, that I'm in the process of working on as we speak, will be coming out, and it'll be all about how to be a wintrapreneur. And you got to understand too, when it comes to writing books, when it comes to being a thought leader, when it comes to actually figuring out how you're going to get paid based on your thoughts and your own intellectual property, it's about adapting to the times. All right. The book I wrote, not that the books I wrote previously are irrelevant. They're going to be relevant. They're going to be evergreen. It's a lifetime job selling your book, but also the next book is also going to have to be about what's going on in the world, how you've adjusted, how you've adapted. That is the process. That is the creative process that you got to commit to. You got to commit to that process. All right. And we're going to dive really, really deep into that today, as we are in the last week of college basketball. My teams, my 3 teams, that I'm a Georgetown fan, Maryland fan, and a Michigan fan. One team, my main team didn't even make the damn tournament, but Michigan and Maryland did. They did make the Sweet 16. They both took L's. Both actually, the Maryland lost its coach, and I think Buzz Williams, if I'm not mistaken, he just got hired to take the Maryland job. And Dusty May seems like he's happy at Michigan, but home is, I believe the home is Indiana for him. So a lot of just saying that is what we're going to discuss today, because my favorite era of college basketball was exactly what you see on the screen, or see on the title that you see today, which is the Big East. The Big East Conference. It just wasn't the same. I will be 100% honest with you. I'm probably a little bit biased, seeing that I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. I went and I played football and went to school in Stony Brook University, Stony Brook, New York. So right in the heart, DC, Philly, New York, that area, that Northeast area, right in the heart of the Big East when it comes to the best basketball players to live, right there, where they go get the best basketball players. I was biased, and I grew up in that culture, and college basketball just has not been the same without what the Big East used to be. You know what I'm saying? Like what the Big East used to be, the rivalry, the really playground legends and doing their thing. It was just such a magnificent time in our history. So what I'll do today is I'll get through some announcements first, and then I'm going to play this article. I'm going to play this article that we have here that just came out a couple hours ago. We'll let that article play, and then we're going to react to it. I'm going to react to it and talk a little bit about, what we can be doing, how things have changed, and the importance of mentality, importance of making it so people are really being a part of something they believe in. There's so much to be learned about how the Big East built out their conference without really having a football powerhouse. All right. For the longest time, Miami was in the Big East after a couple years, but that was like the real first football powerhouse. But when we really dive into the weeds of things, and I give you kind of a history lesson of how it started. And I'll be honest with you, I had to go back and watch the 30 for 30, the Requiem for the Big East that they did. That's really when it really got brought to my attention that I was a part of this. And this is why it's so important to document these things. It's why it's so important to really know your history and viewership and things like that. It's so important. Like I went back, I remember it was Saturday. Yeah, it was Saturday when I realized I was going to be, was it Saturday? No, it was Friday. It was Friday. Yeah, it was Friday. It was Friday when I realized I was going to be talking about this topic, where I went and I watched I rewatched 30 for 30, took a ton of notes, and, took a ton of notes and said, this is something that is so important, especially given, man. Yes, but yeah. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. All right. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself right now. Let me get through a couple announcements first, and then we will go from there. First things first. West Palm Beach. If you are located in the West Palm Beach area and you are interested in free boxing lessons, just hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen. Or if you're listening to this on the Move Swiftly podcast, just go to freeboxing.makeyourmove.com. That's freeboxing.makeyourmove.com. Put in your information and you will be contacted. Next thing, as I mentioned in the intro, as I mentioned Monday through every single day in the intro, business owners, the Move Swiftly brand is here to serve you. It is here to serve you. It is here to help you implement. I am here to help you implement a system, conduct a workshop that's going to make it so you have a staff and a system that is just working for you, that is grinding, where you as a business owner focus on what you need to be focusing on, which is making sure the money's coming in, period, point blank. That's your job description. I don't want to hear anything else. If you own the business, if you're the one running the show, your job is to make sure the money's coming in. There's nothing else you have to be doing, or you should be doing. You should be spending your time doing, but making sure the money's coming in. All right, period. And you should be building out your system in which you have for your staff and how you keep your staff around. That should be working harder than you, and make it so you're able to do that. That's the way it should work. And if it's not working that way, and I'm pretty sure it isn't, because you see a lot of business owners that take on a lot of different hats, I'm pretty sure it isn't, then you need to be going to freeguide.makeyourmove.com. That's freeguide.makeyourmove.com. put your information in. I will send you a free 10-step process, 1,000% free 10 steps in which you can start to at least get yourself moving and get a start on the process. All right. So that's freeguide.makeitmove.com. Also, be sure to tap in with me on the Patreon link, patreon.com/as144. And all of that is available on let me just get it pulled up here, makeyourmove.com. That's makeymove.com. One-stop shop for all your teamwork and your self-development needs. As you can see here, as I'm scrolling, if you're looking, if you're not looking, again, just go to makeyourmove.com. You can shop, you can join the Patreon, you can book me to speak, or you could just learn more about As One Crookshank, or tune into another one of those absolutely fantastic episodes of the Move Swiftly podcast. #1 show on innovative teamwork. #1 and running continues to be #1 day in and day out. All right, here we go. Let's get in. Let's get right in to the article that just dropped. As you can see on your screen, it just dropped 4 hours ago. And this guy that you see on, I don't want to butcher his name, but it's Mike. I'll call him Mike T. Mike Tender. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Let me see if I could pull it up real quick, if I could sound it up. But he's a legend, man. Tender something. What's his name? It's Mike Transky. That's it. Yeah, Transky. Mike Transky. Oh man, listen. I first heard him speak. He was on a panel discussion talking about college football. All right, this was back before Mike Transky. Man, I wonder what he is up to. What is he up to now these days? Yeah, so I first heard him speak. I'll say it like this. I first heard him speak when they were. Let me not minimize it. I first heard him speak when they were talking about something called College Football Blueprint for Change. It was College Football Blueprint for Change. And it was before the transfer portal, before the playoff system, before a lot of the changes that were going on in college football were going on. He was on a panel, and they had a live panel discussion on ESPN that I actually do refer to every now and then because there were a lot of points. It was him, Bob Stoops was on there, Kirk Herbstreit, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban was on there. You had Robert Smith, Mark May, a lot of like the big heavy hitters in the college football commentary world, a world that I need to see myself. I'm pushing to get into myself, kind of throwing my resume, throwing my hat in the ring when it comes to that myself. So, but anyway, they were talking about the name of the YouTube video is called College Football Blueprint for Change. And I strongly recommend you go listen to it at some point. But he was discussing college basketball. It got brought up about college basketball. And he started to say something that was very profound. I'm not going to play it because I don't want to get demonetized. He said, look, college basketball's problems are immense. And this is word for word because I've watched this on multiple occasions. I have watched it over and over and over again. Wait a minute. My Wi-Fi is, come on, Wi-Fi, don't do this to me right now. All right, we're back. So anyway, he was talking about how college basketball's problems are immense. And he also said, after he made that point, he goes, if college football does not get their hands wrapped around this 7-on-7, the scholastic influence, the street agents, and the people coming in and out of these athletes' life, promising this, promising that, if they don't get their hands on the situation, college football's problems is going to be just as bad as college basketball. That was the first time I ever heard him speak. And to think now, as I developed, and I heard this was, again, some time ago, but as I developed and I got into the game myself, I started to realize exactly what he was saying. And it dawned on me that he was like the main dude. He was one of the people that's responsible for building out the Big East and what the Big East used to be. All right. So let the article play, and then we're going to get into a lot of points in terms of how you can really apply this to your life, how you can apply this to your business. What are the things that you're going to be able to do that make it so you're a part of something special, like I mentioned, right? It's so crucial, and the thing about it is when you see rare situations like the one you're about to hear about, it's so crucial that you take in every moment. You take in every moment because you just never know how long they're going to last. And they're so rare. And the success is it is so rewarding when you see people who built something from scratch and then made something out of it and created an incredible opportunity. So let me let it play.
What the Big East used to be, a FWIN Trapreneur Wednesday reflection. Welcome to another edition of a SWIN to Trapreneur Wednesday, a space where we spotlight what it means to win, build, and pursue excellence in both business and life. Before we dive in, let's clear something up. What is a win trapreneur? Glad you asked. It's a term I coined to describe someone with an intense entrepreneurial vision, who's also been fortunate enough to find a job that pays them consistently, and whose mission aligns with that bigger vision. It's about building something great while staying rooted in something steady. It's balance with ambition. And today's reflection. It's about something near and dear to my heart, the Big East Conference, or at least what it used to be. Why this matters now. As I write this during the final stretch of March, I'm hit with a wave of nostalgia. Maybe it's the tournament season energy. Maybe it's because my squads, Maryland and Michigan, both made it to the sweep before falling to top seeds. Or maybe it's because I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, and went to college at Stony Brook University in Long Island, smack in the heart of what was once Big East territory.
Yes, it was.
More than just a conference, the Big East was a movement. A basketball-first brotherhood built on grit, rivalry, talent, and cultural impact. And we've drifted so far from that today that I felt compelled to go back and relive its legacy. Especially as a sports lover and someone deeply committed to building brands, movements, and moments that matter.
All right, I gotta pause real quick because this line right here, basketball first brotherhood built on grit, rivalry, and talent. Let me just tell you why that's important, because the majority of the schools that were in the Big East, if you go back and look at it, it's the Providences of the world, obviously the Georgetowns of the world. There was Syracuse as well. A lot of these schools were not major football powerhouses, right? They were not major football. UConn, right? We're not major football powerhouses. And football is usually the sport that is bringing in the most revenue. Yes, it takes up the most revenue, but also it brings in the most revenue. So when they were able to build it out just from a basketball standpoint, there was a lot of really, really unique opportunities that had to come into play. All right. So when I talk about grit, rivalry, talent, and a cultural impact, what I mean is that they didn't depend on big money they didn't depend on other things. They just had to focus on basketball in this Northeast area and had to trust that the talent in the Northeast area was going to be enough to attract the viewership. All right. That's a big deal. That's a big deal, because this was during the time where you had the UNCs, you had the Dukes, you had the Kansas, and you had other basketball powerhouses that they had to compete with. And they would come to the Northeast, they would come to our area and take our kids. And when it came to the Big East and what they did, plain and simple, it was about keeping your talent home, keeping your talent, keeping your home. You got to own your backyard. When I spent a lot of time. I'm a scout by trade, by the way, college scout by trade. Like, I'm a recruiter by trade. That was my first job out of college. And one of the things that was constantly said, I learned very, very quickly. I learned this when I was a player, to be 100% honest with you. When I played, I learned this. When it comes to recruiting, you got to own your backyard. When I say own your backyard, I mean, if you're recruiting for, let's say, because I'm in Florida now, let's say I'm coaching at FAU. All the best players in West Palm Beach, Boca, South Florida need to be going to FAU. And, obviously they're not the University of Miami, but Miami is one of those private schools that eventually joined the Big East. And that's why it happened. Obviously now they're in ACC and things changed because, the way the money worked out. But this was the mentality. This was the mentality. Like, the more I reflected on this story, I started thinking, okay, that's probably what drew the University of Miami to the Big East initially, because that was the mentality. Keep your dogs home, keep your homegrown talent in the state, and you ain't gonna have no problems. You ain't gonna have no problems if that's the mentality. All right, that's the Big East. That's that Big East mentality. That's that Eastern, that Northeast swagger that a lot of us walk around with. So, want to make sure I mention that as we move forward.
That matter. The man who built the Big East, David Gavitt.
All right.
To truly understand what the Big East was, you need to know the name David Gavitt.
Mm-hmm.
This man didn't just create a basketball conference.
Mm-hmm.
He created a blueprint for exposure, legacy building, and strategic media partnerships. His goal: give elite players in cities like New York, DC, and Philly a platform. These were places bursting with basketball talent, but with limited visibility on the national scale. So Gavitt built a basketball-only conference in the Northeast, and then struck what would become a game-changing partnership with ESPN, which just so happened to be based in Bristol, Connecticut. The result: unprecedented TV deals and exposure for schools that suddenly became household names.
All right, real quick. Another major lesson, and I'm going to dive into it as we go along, but I want to make sure that these things don't get brushed over. All right. You have the Big East, like I mentioned here, Philly, New York, DC, and then you have a little known, at the time, this was a little known sports network television show named ESPN that had its headquarters in Bristol, Connecticut. And when you think about how that worked out, how that marriage worked out to where ESPN's trying to get their, kind of get their foot in the door, they're trying to establish themselves as the premier place to watch sports. You have this guy, David Gavitt, who says to himself, okay, look, we got talent. We're keeping talent at home. We're keeping the guys that you want to see that are must-see TV, not only the players, but also the coaches who have huge personalities and they genuinely don't like each other. Like if you go and watch the 30 for 30, you hear Jim Boeheim say he wasn't friends with John Thompson. They didn't like each other. It was a genuine dislike for each other. They could not stand each other. And that created that real, I hate to call it a soap opera because this was just basketball. This was sports that created that viewership to where you wanted to watch two teams really go at it each other and compete their ass off. Not worry about some transfer portal shit, not worry about what they're getting in the NIL deals and all that. Again, not complaining so much, but just explaining to you how it was. What people wanted to watch was, let's roll the balls out and let's see who can really ball, not who tweets the best, right? Not who can post the best Instagram reel or whatever the hell it is these kids do nowadays, or post the best TikTok reel. It was about who's going to be on the court and who can really, dice it up and get it done on the court like that. And that's what it was about. That's must-see TV. So you got to understand, especially as we're talking entrepreneurship, David Gavitt would be like the entrepreneur-minded person, and ESPN is the company now that you can strike gold with, strike a deal with that makes it so it's like, my needs are met, your needs are met, and these deals that I will let you go look up those deals on your own. But these deals that the Big East had with ESPN, unprecedented was like all Big East basketball all the time, and they were winning championships, man. It's one thing, and that's another thing that you got to understand when it comes to sports and when it comes to you actually being remembered. And I learned this back in my when I played at Stony Brook. I was lucky enough very fortunate enough to be a part of the program when we won 2 Big South championships. We won 2 Big South championships when I was there. And I remember talking to a lot of the guys who were from that New York area, who grew up like, Long Island, Union, there, like those areas in the Pennsylvania and stuff like that, just were part of the program, had heard about Stony Brook for years. Like I didn't really hear about Stony Brook until I started looking at FCS programs, 1AA. Back then it used to be called 1AA. But he was telling me, look, this was a program that started at D3, and they worked their way up now to where they're one of the premier Division I conferences in the FCS at the FCS level. And he was like, look, when it comes to actually getting funding and actually getting a program off the ground, you got to put the banners in the stands, dog. You got to put the banners in the stands. You got to actually get them dubs, boy. You got to get them dubs. In fact, let me see if I have it. Real quick. I know I'm getting off topic here. Is it there? But just go back and look up I did do a video on this. I did a whole live stream on this. Go back and look up it's titled My Championship Experience. So I played 3 years of college football. The 1 year I wasn't playing because I tore my ACL, but the 3 years in which I was actually active because I wasn't dealing with an injury, I have 3 rings. 3 rings for a person that got in the game, that actually played in the game for maybe 5 plays, and I got 3 rings. So I was scout team player throughout those 3 years, and I really had my coach's hat on. And this is why these kinds of stories really mean so much to me, because the majority of you guys majority of people, period, that want to play in college are not going to be good enough to play in college, first of all. But the majority of people who play at the collegiate level are the majority, 99% of you are not going to be good enough to play in the NFL for any significant length of time, NFL or NBA for any significant length of time. So it's really a matter of what did you learn in those 4 years and how exactly can you apply it to the rest of your life. And my experience, again, was just I couldn't ask for anything better because of everything I was learning professionally and developing in professionally. And when you hear a story like this and you see it be retold, in fact, let me pull it up real quick. This is exactly what you should go and watch yourself. Go watch this yourself. I'm just telling you right now, go watch this 30 for 30 yourself. It's an absolute, it was an absolute pleasure rewatching. I watched it the first time and then rewatching it was incredible. But right here, where we're talking about the marriage between ESPN and the Big East, that's something you really have to think about now with the new forms of technology, with how things are broadcasted these days, and say to yourself, how can I take what's in my own head? How can I take it and apply it and create something incredible? All right, so let me go back a little bit because I'm pretty sure I kind of got you guys off topic, and that's going to happen, by the way.
Only conference in the Northeast, and then struck what would become a game-changing partnership with ESPN, which just so happened to be based in Bristol, Connecticut. The result: unprecedented TV deals and exposure for schools that suddenly became household names. If you're in sports marketing or business at all, I can't recommend this documentary enough. Requiem for the Big East. Absolutely required viewing. Coaching icons amp, Northeast swagger. What made the Big East special wasn't just strategy, it was personality.
Yes, sir.
Growing up where I did, John Thompson was a legend. And for me, becoming a Georgetown fan wasn't just about watching the Hoyas, it was personal. When I started coaching, I volunteered at a YMCA, where one of Thompson's former assistants, Melvin Reed, became one of my early mentors. Through him, I got firsthand stories of when Georgetown ruled college basketball.
All right, so bro, I gotta pause it here because I have to tell this. So let me pull him up so you guys see his name. So yes, that did happen. All right, that did happen. But also this guy, and for those of you who are listening to this on the Move Swiftly podcast, I just pulled up I did a Google search and pulled up a guy named Craig Esherick. Craig Esherick, as you can see, from Silver Spring, Maryland, played at Georgetown, and he also spent some time as the Georgetown basketball head coach as well. And the reason I'm pulling him up is because not only did I meet Mel, and this is why, again, no matter, I know the Georgetown Hoyas are really, really bad right now. We've been through a really rough decade, feels like, right? I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, I'm going to ride with my guys no matter what. For not only Melvin Reed, but this guy, Craig Esherick, actually was someone that I happened to meet. I happened to meet him because he's a sports management professor at George Mason. And I had just taken a job as a trainer at something called D1 Sports, D1 training and therapy. And it's no longer in business, but it used to be in Chantilly, Virginia. And I was trying to just do so much. I was trying to get people in. Again, this is pretty much just a market. It's like a marketing position, trainer, stuff like that. Again, I've been around the block. I can give you that story another day, another time. But anyway, I had reached out to somebody and I didn't know who this was. I really didn't. I didn't know who it was. until I reached out trying to, drum up some business with George Mason and this D1 in Chantilly. And he just happened to be the person. He just happened to be the person that I ended up getting in contact with. And what he told me in our one conversation, I had one conversation with this guy. What he told me, he goes, look, Aswan, you're doing the right things. You're doing the right things. The same way you found me is the same way you got to go about your business. It's the same way. You just got to go after it. Reach out to people, have a conversation, take that conversation and apply it. All right. And then when this was after I had the conversation with him, then I looked him up and I realized, oh, snap. This is the dude. This is the one that actually succeeded John Thompson. I didn't know that. Again, this was still back in my younger days. I didn't realize that. And then that's why I was like, you see, that kind of mentality of just going after certain things. You just never know who you're going to be. There's no telling who somebody knows. So that was another point. It wasn't just, where is it? Where's the article? Where is it? No, did I lose it? No. Yeah, it wasn't just Melvin Reed at the YMCA, but like the entire area of the DMV basketball wise was sprinkled with a lot of John Thompson's former assistants and former people that, a young ambitious guy like me who really wanted to get into sports, you just kind of run into them and they tell you this story, they tell you that story, and it gives you that extra energy, the extra boost to say, let's go after this. All right. So I want to make sure I mention that as well. Let me go back a little bit. We're going to get through the article. I promise. We're going to get through it. It's so much stuff, man. Like every time I do these, there's so many things that come out. And that's another thing about being a thought leader is like, there's so much that you got to do to the point where you just got to get on and just ride with it. Anyway,
Becoming a Georgetown fan wasn't just about watching the Hoyas. It was personal. Mm-hmm. When I started coaching, I volunteered at a YMCA where one of Thompson's former assistants, Melvin Reed, became one of my early mentors. Through him, I got firsthand stories of when Georgetown ruled college basketball. But the Big East wasn't a one-coach show.
Titans,
you had titans like Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, Jim Calhoun at UConn, Rick Pitino at Providence and later Louisville. These guys weren't just coaching. They were building empires. Their personalities sold the game. They were tough, loud, intelligent, and sometimes controversial, but they were always compelling.
Period. And that's what sells. Again, we're going to go back to the deal that they struck with ESPN. And the ESPN you see now, you can credit the Big East and those coaching personalities that led to what we see now, right? That's important for you to notify, important for you to note as we continue here. All right, let it keep rolling.
Rivalries that meant something. The culture of the Big East was street ball meets primetime TV.
Come on,
Syracuse versus Georgetown wasn't just a rivalry, it was a war. Grit, trash talk, pushing, shoving, packed gyms, and bragging rights that stretched from the Bronx to Baltimore.
Yeah.
It was personal, it was raw, it was playground basketball under the lights, and sadly, we've lost some of that. Today's college hoops landscape is filled with transfers chasing better NIL deals or minutes elsewhere, and I get it. But the soul of the game is shifting. With players constantly rotating, rivalries don't feel the same, and fan loyalty starts to fade. Long term, that could hurt viewership and ultimately the money. Direct deals, real ownership.
This is big.
What really makes this a Trapreneur Wednesday story is what the coaches did off the court. There were no middlemen. Coaches struck deals directly with brands like Nike. In fact, in Requiem for the Big East, Boeheim admits that Nike paid him more than Syracuse. And it worked. We saw John Thompson in commercials. We saw fan bases rocking team gear like it was a badge of honor. Fans felt like they were part of something bigger, because they were. It was authentic brand building before social media. Mm-hmm. It was business and basketball. And it's exactly the kind of thinking that inspires my own journey as a Trapreneur. Results matter. TV deals, cool. Brand partnerships, necessary. But you know what matters most? Wins. Championships, hardware.
Yes, sir.
The Big East wasn't just flashy, it was dominant. Just look it up. Schools in the Big East have brought home more than their fair share of NCAA titles over the years. Their play backed up the hype. And that's the ultimate takeaway here. Whether you're in sports, business, or any competitive field, your brand only matters if your results back it up. Final word. The Big East was more than a conference. It was a cultural shift, a vision realized, and a business model ahead of its time. To be a wintrapreneur is to walk that same line. Lead with vision, make real direct partnerships, connect with your community, and above all, win. So here's to the Big East, and to building something with heart, hustle, and history. Aswand Cruikshank. What the big...
Wow, man. That's what it's all about, guys. And as I was re-listening to that, and I finally actually let it play, I thought about last week and what I talked about last week with Coach Vassos, and the things that he was doing with the program that he came a part of, and how he involved the parents and went directly. Main thing that we're going to take away from this today is that concept of cutting out the middlemen and going directly. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing that we got to talk about. All right, because when it comes to college and trying to speak at colleges, to trying to get things done at the collegiate level, someone who's experienced that, there's a lot of red tape. Let's say you wanted to go and you wanted to go do a speaking gig at a college, or you want to get a contract with some college to do some work with them. It's going to be, you might meet someone on that college campus, but then that person has to go to their director, then that person has to go to the admissions counselor, then that person got to go through their board of regents, and the board has to okay it. And by the time you actually see your money or get a deal done, it would have been months that go by, and that's if they contact you again. There's so many layers that go into working in the collegiate world of trying to get a deal done, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a businessman, trying to get a deal done in the college world, because college is a business in itself. They don't tell you that. They sell you on college as if it's an opportunity, but the college, at the core of what a college is, what college is in general, is it's a business. It is not something that they make it seem it is in high school. All right. Now, again, myself, I've been around the block. I've been to a lot of different schools. Primarily the high school that I went to, there was a requirement, an unwritten requirement, that you're going to college, right? That was the unwritten requirement. That was pretty much what was said without actually being said verbally, that all the kids that went to good counsel, they're going to some fancy school, and college was sold as this secure thing. But what I found out on my own after I left good counsel is that college is a business. It's a business, folks. It is I have spoken about this on many different occasions. It is a business. And just so you understand, and this is when I first learned it was a business. It was actually my mother who really pointed this thing out, right? It was so my dream school, I did when it comes to me college wise, and the reason I'm an expert and I'm qualified to talk about this is because this guy right here, if you look at this visually, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm holding up a copy of my latest book, Transferring D1. All right. And it's all about my experience when I was at Stony Brook University. Stony Brook University was my dream school. All right. Stony Brook University was the school in which I wanted to be at. I planted my flag. I worked my ass off from towards the end of my senior year to finally when I got in my junior year of college. 2 years to get to that school. That was the school I wanted to be at. And my grades were horrible in high school. My cumulative was like a 2.2. And the only chance I had of getting into school was because of football. So obviously this story, when it comes to the Big East, it was resonated with me quite a bit. But what I learned in that process, because again, I started off at a Division II place. I tore my ACL, and then I had to move back home, go to community college. And then all of a sudden, when I went through it and did what I had to do at a community college, all of a sudden I got accepted into Stony Brook off just straight merit, off my grades. And I remember my mother pointing that out, like, look, son, it's a business, right? 2 years ago, you weren't smart enough to get into a college because you had certain SAT scores that weren't great, or GPA that wasn't great, but you go to community college, you pay your money, and then all of a sudden you're smart enough to go to this university. No, that's my point. It's a business. It's sold as an opportunity, but the truth is it's a business. And it is, I'm not going to say it's not an opportunity, but it's up to you to take advantage of the opportunity. It's up to you to understand it's a business first. Like, I know people that have decided, hey, instead of going to college, they're going to go get a trade, or instead of going to a big 4-year university, I'm just going to go get my associate's degree and then go get licensed and certified to do this thing. But all I needed was an AA and I could make this work. It's you understanding that it's a business first. It's a business first, and then figure out how you're going to land in that business and where you're going to plant your flag. All right. So when you look at and I'm bringing all this up for a reason, just stay with me on this. When you look at how the Big East Conference was built and what it was all about, they cut out so much of the middleman. Like, let's say it's a Duke or North Carolina, right? These are basketball powerhouses I'm mentioning, and you get a job, or you walk into a situation in which you're at Duke, or you're at North Carolina or Kansas, or one of these big powerhouse programs, or Kentucky, or a Big Blue Nation, or whatever it is. You don't really have to go out and sell your product like that. The money's going to come in because you're a part of the ACC, which is the Atlantic Coastal Conference. The money's going to come in because you're part of what's another one? SEC. You're part of the SEC. You're part of the Big Ten, right? Because you're part of these powerhouse conference that have historical context to it. The money's going to come in regardless. Like the sponsorship money and the donorship money and all that kind of stuff, it's going to come in regardless. It's even like the school. So for those of you who don't know, I do teach at a school named the Center for Creative Education, and we're a brand new startup school. It's the foundation school. The foundation school was only started maybe 3 or 4 years ago, so it's not even 5 years old. I mean, we just had our first graduation last year, and it was only 3 kids that graduated from 5th grade. So we are so much like this Big East type of culture, where we're not in a situation where we're just going to get money coming in. It's not going to be federal money just coming in, taxpayer money coming in. You got to cut out the middleman and go after the money on your own, the same way that David Gavitt did, the same way that he did when he created this Big East Conference, to where by the time he struck that deal directly with ESPN, now the coaches had an opportunity to go directly to Nike, directly to certain companies, whether it's Gatorade, whatever it is. And they were like, all right, cool, let's just cut the deal for me and my players. So you saw the Big East really invent the sports marketing culture that we see today. And again, I will close you out with this concept because I want to make sure I'm on the record saying this as frequently as possible. You got to win, man. You got to win. You got to put the banners in the stands. You got to get those championships. There was a point in the whole, when you go watch the 30 for 30, there was a point where I believe it was 3 out of the 4 teams that were in the Final Four one year, all were in the Big East. We know, and we haven't even talked about what UConn has done on the women's basketball side. Like, I mean, come on. The most dominant college basketball, I would argue to say, and I'm a Georgetown fan, and I don't even mind saying this. I would say that the most dominant college basketball program that has existed over the past 2 decades has been the UConn Huskies. Where exactly is ESPN located? Right there in Connecticut. Again, I'm not saying that that's the direct reason, but being a part of that conference has helped in so many ways, keeping that talent. You're talking about Connecticut. They're getting a lot of people from that New York area, that Philly area, and they don't got to go that far. In fact, I remember when this was back when I was scouting I was a college scout, and I would go to these girls basketball tournaments, and I would see the UConn coaches, the Chris Dailies, the Gino Oriemas, and things of that nature. And it was like, you saw how focused they were. You saw like the way UConn's women's basketball players walked around. There was one year, in fact, during that time, during my when I was in my college, where UConn won both the women's and the men's national championship. Like if you're talking about dominant college college basketball programs, it's hard not to say that University of Connecticut hasn't been the most dominant, period. Both men's and if you want to factor in men's and women's, it's hard to not say that. Again, I say it kind of gritting my teeth because I'm a Hoya fan. I'm a Hoya fan personally, but at the end of the day, I'm smart enough and I'm mature enough to use my discernment and say, okay, that's the truth. That's not the truth. Things like that. So as I close you out, here's what I want you to consider as I close you out is number one, you got to really consider what are the resources that are made available to you that's not available to a competitor. All right. We all got competition. Everyone out there got a competitor, got somebody that we're competing with to get better and, to go after the same things. You, me, everybody got competitors. And what are the resources? What are the resources that you have that your competition doesn't have? And how often, how frequently are you taking advantage of that resource? Because I'll tell you from experience, I'm living through something right now as we speak, in which what was once a resource at some point is no longer going to be a resource to you, and you got to go after your shit on your own. All right, I'll tell you from my own personal experience. Right now, the school that I teach at, the way it's kind of set up from, this plus LY with what they're doing at the Center for Creative Education, me being a teacher here, this is a resource that not a lot of thought leaders have. Not a lot of authors, not a lot of content creators, people that do the work I do. They don't have this resource for me to continue to develop, have a place to host their show and all that kind of stuff. But again, I took advantage of the resource because it was made available to me. That when it comes time for me to move on and, really get, flap my wings or whatever, move on my own, again, the resource won't be available to me. So I took advantage. When I worked at 9 Round, when I was a trainer at 9 Round, and this was all boxing, this is all teaching people how to box. Again, utilize my resource. There's a book that came from that experience in teaching people, hey, jab, cross, uppercut, hook, and then how to align that with other sports. Everywhere you go, no matter what it is, there's something that you could be using as a resource. And if you ask yourself these types of questions, always going to land on your feet, always going to figure something out, always. And it just depends now on the people that you have in your life and how the people in your life are benefiting you. That is the key. That is exactly where it is you need to understand is you win in life. Pat Summitt, the great Pat Summitt, since we're talking college basketball, greatest basketball coach, arguably, you could definitely in the top 5 of all time basketball coaches. There's a lady named Pat Summitt, and she says it on a regular. She says it in over and over and over and over and over and over again. She has said it, the late Pat Summitt. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us physically, but she, obviously you're always going to remember, legends, titans like Pat Summitt. She was the head coach for the Lady Vols, the University of Tennessee, won, multiple championships, did a lot of great things. In fact, she might actually, Pat Summitt, I might have to talk about her on I might have to do a whole episode, Pat Summitt, Trapreneur. Yeah, I might have to feature her. I might have to feature her on it because she's going to require a whole dialogue itself. But anyway, she's on the record always saying, you win in life with people. You win in life with people. So when you start meeting the right people, things start happening for you, but you got to have yourself in a ready, set position to take advantage and utilize the resources that are made available to you. All right. And we all have them. All right. So all that being said, main website to check out to dive deeper into everything I'm doing to get yourself a workshop and really move forward with all of the work and develop this system, because again, this is a system and you need somebody coming into your business and figuring out how to improve your system so you don't continue to lose these profits lose your profits because you're always constantly dealing with turnover and things of that nature. You need to go to makeyourmove.com. That's makeyaamove.com. One-stop shop for all your teamwork and your self-development needs. As one Crookshank, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker. Checking out. You guys continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.